Yeah. Welcome to the History Black channel. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe so you never miss more stories like this, stories about extraordinary lives, forgotten performers, medical mysteries, human resilience, and the strange corners of history that still leave us speechless today. Mirin Dajo, the man who seemed invulnerable. Mirin Dajo, born in the Netherlands in 1912, became one of the most baffling figures of the 20th century. To the public, he looked like a man who had stepped beyond the limits of the human body. To doctors, he was a walking mystery. In the 1940s, Dajo rose to international fame for performances that seemed impossible. He allowed swords, long needles, and other sharp objects to pass through his body without visible injury, without bleeding, and seemingly without pain. Audiences watched in stunned silence as metal appeared to pierce straight through him, yet he remained calm, composed, and almost untouched. At first, the medical world dismissed him as a clever illusionist. Surely, they thought, there had to be a trick. But then came the examinations. X-rays were taken while objects passed through his body. Doctors inspected him carefully, searching for wires, hidden devices, or theatrical deception. What they found only deepened the mystery. There was no simple illusion, no obvious trick, no explanation that satisfied everyone. Mirin Dajo became a symbol of the impossible, a man who seemed to challenge the laws of anatomy and survival. Whether viewed as a medical anomaly, a spiritual figure, or one of history's strangest performers, he left behind a legacy of fascination, disbelief, and unanswered questions. Johnny Eck, the half-man who lived fully. Johnny Eck was born in Baltimore, Maryland, in 1911. Without the lower half of his torso, to many people of his time, his body seemed like a limitation. But Johnny refused to let the world define him by what he lacked. Instead, he became unforgettable. Johnny was an actor, a performer, an artist, a musician, a filmmaker, and an acrobat with remarkable strength and charisma. On stage, he moved with confidence and grace, astonishing audiences with his physical skill. Off stage, he painted, played music, created films, and lived with a creative fire that made him far more than a sideshow attraction. His fame grew when he appeared in the 1932 film Freaks, where he showed the world not only his unique appearance, but his talent, personality, and presence. Johnny challenged the cruel idea that normal meant valuable. He proved that a person could be extraordinary not because of how they looked, but because of how fiercely they lived. Today, Johnny Eck is remembered as one of the most iconic figures of the old Curiosity Show era, a man of resilience, charm, intelligence, and talent, who turned a difficult life into a remarkable one. Martin Lorello, the Owlman. Martin Lorello, known to audiences as the Owlman, possessed an ability so strange that people could hardly believe what they were seeing. He could turn his head a full 180 degrees, looking directly behind himself without moving the rest of his body. For crowds gathered under circus tents and in variety theatres, the sight was shocking. A man would stand before them, his body facing forward, and then slowly his head would rotate backward in a way that seemed to defy nature itself. But Lorello's act was not a simple trick. His ability came from years of training, extreme physical control, and a rare condition that allowed him to manipulate his vertebrae without suffering serious injury. It was dangerous, unsettling, and unforgettable. Born in Germany, Lorello later immigrated to the United States, where he continued to amaze American audiences. He became one of the most recognizable performers in curiosity shows, not merely because of the strangeness of his act, but because he embodied the deep human fascination with the impossible. Martin Lorello remains remembered as one of the most mysterious figures of sideshow history, a performer who forced audiences to question what the human body could truly endure. Alice Elizabeth Doherty, the werewolf girl. Alice Elizabeth Doherty was born on March 14, 1887, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. From the moment she entered the world, her life was unlike almost anyone else's. Alice had an extremely rare genetic condition, known as hypertrichosis lanuginosa. Because of it, she was born with a thick layer of soft hair called lanugo covering her body. Her appearance immediately drew attention, curiosity, and eventually public fascination. As a young girl, Alice became known as the Werewolf Girl, a title created by the entertainment world of the time. Her parents displayed her in curiosity shows, where audiences paid to see the child whose appearance seemed almost mythical. But behind the posters and the spectacle, Alice was not a monster, not a legend, and not a creature. She was a girl surrounded by family, care, and affection. Despite being exhibited to the public, she lived a relatively normal life compared to many others in that industry. Alice's unique appearance made her famous, but her dignity made her memorable. She turned the difference that made people stare into a way to support her family and captivate audiences. Today, she is remembered not only for her rare condition, but for the quiet strength with which she carried herself in a world that often saw difference as entertainment. Myrtle Corbin, the four-legged girl from Texas. Myrtle Corbin was born in 1868 and became known across the United States as the four-legged girl from Texas. At only 13 years old, she entered the world of sideshows and curiosity exhibitions, where her extraordinary body made her a sensation. Myrtle had a rare condition called dipygus. She was born with an additional set of smaller legs, believed to have belonged to a parasitic twin that had not fully developed. This physical difference made her one of the most talked about performers of her era. Although she was born in Tennessee, much of her life and career became associated with Texas, where she performed in circuses and curiosity shows. Audiences came from far away to see her, drawn by the sensational posters and the rumors surrounding her appearance. Yet Myrtle's story was not simply about spectacle. She lived a relatively long life for her time, reaching the age of 59. She married, had a family, and built a life beyond the stage. Myrtle Corbin remains one of the most famous figures in sideshow history, a woman whose body made her known, but whose life proved she was far more than the name printed on a circus poster. Pascual Piñon, the two-headed Mexican. Pascual Piñon was a Mexican railroad worker whose life changed when a curiosity show promoter noticed a large cyst or tumor on the top of his head. What might have remained a private medical condition became, in the world of sideshow entertainment, the foundation for a public persona. To make his appearance even more shocking to audiences, a facial prosthesis was created and placed over the growth. Makeup was added to form eyes, a nose, and a mouth, making it appear as though Piñon had a second face rising from his head. He was promoted as the two-headed Mexican, and crowds across North America came to see him. The exhibitions were exploitative. No doubt, they transformed a medical condition into a spectacle designed to shock and attract paying audiences. Yet Piñon also used the earnings from these performances to support his family. In a difficult world with limited opportunities, the sideshow became both a stage and a means of survival. Pascual Piñon is remembered as a tragic yet fascinating figure, a man caught between exploitation and necessity, mystery and performance, human dignity and public curiosity. Pauline Musters, the world's smallest woman. Pauline Musters was born in the Netherlands in 1876. During her short life, she reached a maximum height of only about 58 centimeters, a fact that brought her worldwide fame. Known as one of the smallest women ever recorded, Pauline became a beloved figure in curiosity shows and variety performances. Her tiny stature amazed audiences. But those who saw her often remembered more than her size. They remembered her charm, her energy, and the presence she carried on stage. She traveled, performed, and captivated crowds at a time when sideshow entertainment could turn physical difference into fame. Pauline became a celebrity, admired not only because she was small, but because she had a vibrant personality that filled the room. Her life, however, was tragically brief. In 1895, at just 19 years old, Pauline died from pneumonia and meningitis. Even so, her story endured. Pauline Musters is remembered as one of the most iconic figures of the curiosity show world, a young woman who turned her small stature into a large and unforgettable career. Prince Randian the Human Serpent. Prince Randian, known as the Human Serpent, was born in 1871 in British Guiana. From birth, he faced a reality most people could scarcely imagine. He had no arms and no legs, but Prince Randian refused to be defined by absence. Using only his torso, shoulders, neck, and head, he developed astonishing control over his body. He could move across the stage with serpent-like motion, roll cigarettes, light them, and even shave, all using only his mouth. Audiences were stunned. What they expected to be a display of limitation became a demonstration of skill, patience, and extraordinary adaptation. Randian became a major figure in freak shows and sideshows during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. He joined the Barnum Circus, where his ability to move like a serpent made him one of the most memorable performers of his time. But he was not merely a spectacle. Prince Randian became a symbol of courage and human resilience. His life showed that physical limitations do not erase ambition, talent, or dignity. He turned what others saw as impossible into a performance that left crowds astonished. Chang and Eng Bunker, the original Siamese twins. Chang and Eng Bunker were born on May 11, 1811, in Samut Songkhram, in what was then known as Siam and is now Thailand. Joined at the sternum, with their livers fused, they would become the most famous conjoined twins in history. In 1829, Chang and Eng travelled to the United States, where they gained fame performing in fairs, theatres and exhibitions. Their condition was so widely publicised that the term Siamese twins became associated with conjoined twins around the world. During their performances, they showed audiences how they were physically connected. But they also did something even more powerful. They demonstrated how they lived. They walked together, ran together, completed ordinary tasks, and showed how two separate minds could coordinate one shared physical reality. Despite never being separated, Chang and Eng built lives far beyond the stage. They married, started families, and became fathers to a remarkable total of 21 children between them. They earned a fortune while traveling across America and became household names. Their story is not simply one of medical rarity. It is a story of adaptation, fame, family, and identity. Chang and Eng Bunker became living proof that even the most unusual circumstances could still contain ambition, love, and legacy. Felix Whirl, the Elastic Man. Felix Whirl, known as the Elastic Man, was born in Wisconsin in 1858. Early in life, he discovered that his body could do things most people would consider impossible. His skin could stretch dramatically, almost like warm rubber. His joints could bend backward in ways that seemed to defy anatomy. To audiences, he looked less like a man and more like someone made of elastic. Felix took his act on the road, performing in museums, circuses, and shows such as the famous Ringling Brothers Circus. Crowds stared as he pulled his skin outward and twisted his limbs into impossible positions. Specialists later speculated that he may have had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a connective tissue disorder that can cause unusually elastic skin and extremely flexible joints. But in his own time, Felix was not seen through the lens of modern medicine. He was seen as a marvel. Felix Whirl became one of the most fascinating figures of sideshow history, a man who turned a rare physical condition into an unforgettable demonstration of the human body, strange and remarkable possibilities. Schlitzie, the star of freaks. Schlitzie, born in 1901, became one of the most recognizable sideshow performers of the 20th century. He had microcephaly, a condition that gave him a small head and created intellectual challenges throughout his life. But Schlitzie's story was not defined by difficulty alone. He had a playful spirit, an infectious laugh, and a natural talent for performance. On stage, he sang, danced, joked, and charmed audiences with his warmth and energy. He found his place in the world of sideshows, where his personality made him a beloved figure among performers and spectators alike. People were drawn not only to his appearance, but to the joy he seemed to radiate. His fame grew when he appeared in the 1932 film Freaks, playing himself. Through that role, Schlitzie became part of cinema history and introduced wider audiences to the humanity behind the sideshow world. Schlitzie's legacy is complicated but powerful. He reminds us that acceptance is not about looking past difference. It is about recognizing the person fully, with dignity, emotion, and spirit. General Tom Thumb, the little man with a giant talent. General Tom Thumb, whose real name was Charles Stratton, was born in 1838. As a child, he was extraordinarily small, standing only a little over 2 feet tall. When P.T. Barnum discovered him at just 4 years old, Stratton's life changed forever. Barnum brought him to the American Museum in New York City, where he quickly became a star. But Tom Thumb was not simply displayed because of his size. He was a skilled entertainer. He could sing, dance, act, tell jokes, and imitate historical figures with remarkable confidence. He became a one-man show. Tom Thumb toured Europe, met royalty, and famously performed before Queen Victoria. His image appeared on souvenirs, trading cards, and household items. He became one of the most famous entertainers of the 19th century. His success proved that charisma could be larger than height, and talent could overpower public prejudice. General Tom Thumb remains one of the defining figures of early American entertainment, a performer who helped shape the future of show business itself. Edward Mordrake, the man with two faces. Edward Mordrake is one of the darkest and strangest legends connected to sideshow history, according to the story. He was born into a wealthy and noble English family in the 19th century, cursed with a second face on the back of his head. This second face, the legend says, could not eat or speak normally, but it whispered to him at night. It murmured horrible thoughts, disturbing him until he could no longer bear its presence. Desperate to be free of what he believed was a curse, Mordrake supposedly sought help from doctors and spiritualists, but no one could remove the second face. No one could save him from the torment he believed followed him into the darkness. The story claims that he eventually sank into despair and madness, taking his own life at a young age. But there is one important truth. The story of Edward Mordrake is widely considered an urban legend. There is no solid medical or historical evidence proving that he ever existed, and yet his legend refuses to die. Edward Mordrake remains a haunting figure in popular imagination, a tragic symbol of fear, deformity, mystery, and the terrifying power of stories that linger long after facts disappear. Cuckoo the bird girl, Cuckoo, whose real name was Minnie Woolsey, was born in 1880 in Georgia. She had a rare condition known as Seckle syndrome, sometimes called bird-headed dwarfism. The condition gave her distinctive features, including a small head, a beak-like nose, and a recessed jaw. Despite her physical challenges, Minnie became a vivid and memorable performer. On stage, she was cheerful, energetic, and captivating. She performed under the name Cuckoo the Bird Girl, a stage identity shaped by the visual language of sideshow entertainment. She often wore bird-like costumes, including feathers and a tiara with a plume. Her performances included eccentric dances and movements meant to resemble a bird, with arm motions that looked like flapping wings. Minnie appeared in sideshows, circuses, and eventually in the famous 1932 film Freaks, directed by Todd Browning. Her presence in the film helped preserve her image in entertainment history. Cuckoo's story reflects both the cruelty and opportunity of the sideshow world. She was displayed because she was different, but she also became a performer whose charm and uniqueness made her unforgettable. Frank Lentini, the three-legged man. Francesco Frank Lentini was born in 1889 in Sirocco, Sicily. From birth, he had a third leg protruding from the right side of his body, caused by a congenital condition linked to an underdeveloped parasitic twin. Rather than hide from the world, Lentini transformed his condition into a career. At the age of 8, his family moved to Connecticut in the United States, where he soon became a major attraction in circuses and carnival shows. Audiences came expecting to see something strange, but Lentini gave them more than spectacle. He gave them humor, personality, and skill. He joked that he needed to eat 15% more than other people to feed the extra leg. On stage, he performed tricks such as jumping rope and kicking soccer balls with his third leg. He also told his personal story, explaining how he learned to accept himself and build a life within the circus world. Frank Lentini became one of the most successful sideshow performers of his generation. He turned what could have been a source of shame into a career built on confidence, humor, and extraordinary resilience. Ella Harper the Camel Girl. Ella Harper was born in 1870 with a rare orthopedic condition called genu recurvatum. Her knees bent backward, making it easier for her to move on all fours than to walk upright. Because of this, she became known as the Camel Girl. Ella entered the world of curiosity shows at the age of 9 under the guidance of showman W. Harris. By the 1880s, she had become a sensation. Posters advertised her unusual movement, and crowds gathered to see the young girl whose body seemed to challenge ordinary human form. Her performances fascinated audiences. She moved with a strange grace, demonstrating the backward bend of her legs and the unusual way she could travel across the stage. But Ella did not stay in the circus forever. In 1886, at the height of her popularity, she left show business to pursue an education and a quieter life. Little is known about her later years, though records suggest she married and lived privately. Ella Harper's story is powerful because she stepped away. She became famous because of her condition, but she chose a life beyond the spotlight. In doing so, she reminded the world that performers were not simply attractions. They were people with futures, choices, and dreams. Annie Jones, the Bearded Lady. Annie Jones was born in Virginia in 1865. As a young child, she began showing signs of hypertrichosis, a condition that caused excessive hair growth. By the time she was only 5 years old, she had already developed a visible beard. Her unusual appearance caught the attention of P.T. Barnum, one of the most famous entertainment promoters of the era. Barnum brought Annie into his American Museum in New York, where she quickly became one of the most popular attractions. She was promoted as the Bearded Lady, but Annie was more than a title. She had charisma, confidence, and a powerful stage presence. Audiences were fascinated by her appearance, but many were also drawn to her personality. Annie's career lasted for many years, and she became one of the most famous bearded women in history. Her life shows the tension at the heart of sideshow entertainment. The same public that stared at difference could also turn a performer into a celebrity. Annie Jones remains remembered as a defining figure of 19th century. Curiosity shows a woman whose appearance made her famous, but whose strength helped her endure. Fannie Mills, the big-footed woman. Fannie Mills was born in Ohio in the 1850s and lived with a condition known as Milroy disease, a form of congenital lymphedema. The disease caused massive swelling, especially in her legs and feet. Her feet grew to extraordinary dimensions, reportedly measuring about 50 centimeters long and 20 centimeters wide. Because of this, she became known as the big-footed woman. Fannie entered the world of sideshows and dime museums, where her condition attracted intense public curiosity. Posters advertised her unusual appearance, and audiences came to see what they believed was one of nature's rarest examples. The demand for her performances grew quickly. Through the sideshow circuit, Fannie earned significant money, enough to support herself and help her family. But her condition likely caused serious health problems throughout her life. Fannie died in 1899 at only 39 years old. The exact cause of her death remains unclear, though complications connected to lymphedema may have played a role. Fannie Mills is remembered as a woman who turned a painful and difficult condition into a means of survival in an era when options for people with visible differences were often painfully limited. George and Willie Muse, the Martian ambassadors. George and Willie Muse were black albino brothers born in Virginia near the end of the 19th century. Their story is one of talent, survival, and heartbreaking exploitation. In 1899, the brothers were taken from their community and separate from their mother Harriet Muse. They were placed into the world of sideshow entertainment under circumstances that today would be recognized as coercive and deeply abusive. Because of their albinism, promoters invented exotic identities for them. They were presented as Eco and Eco, the Martian ambassadors, and other false titles designed to erase their real names, their heritage, and their humanity. For years, they performed in circuses and curiosity shows. Despite the exploitation, George and Willie developed musical talent and became popular figures. They learned to survive in a world that profited from their difference while denying them freedom. Eventually, their mother found them and fought to bring them home. What followed was a legal struggle for their freedom and identity. The story of George and Willie Muse is one of the most painful in sideshow history. It reveals not only the fascination of the public, but the cruelty of an industry that could turn human beings into inventions for profit. Charmian, the trapeze artist and strong woman. Charmian, born Lavery Valley in 1875, became one of the most daring performers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. She was a trapeze artist, vaudeville performer, and strong woman at a time when physical strength was often considered a male domain. Her performances were bold, athletic, and controversial. One of her most famous acts involved performing acrobatics on the trapeze while removing layers of clothing. a routine that shocked and fascinated audiences of the era. Charmian appeared in famous theatres and circus venues, becoming an iconic figure in entertainment. But her importance went beyond the stage. She challenged the rigid gender expectations of her time. In an age when women were often expected to appear delicate and restrained, Charmian displayed strength, control, daring, and confidence high above the audience. Her body became an instrument of rebellion. She showed that women could be powerful, athletic, fearless, and commanding. Charmian is remembered as a pioneer in circus and vaudeville history, a performer who broke barriers while flying through the air. Lionel, the lion-faced man. Lionel, born in Poland in 1890, became known as the lion-faced man because of hypertrichosis, a condition that caused thick hair to grow across his face and body. His appearance reminded audiences of a lioness mane, and promoters quickly turned that resemblance into a stage identity. At only 4 years old, Lionel was sold to a German circus owner who saw his appearance as a business opportunity. From that moment, he entered the world of curiosity shows, where he became one of the most famous performers of his time. But Lionel was more than his appearance. He was intelligent, charismatic, and gentle. He learned several languages, traveled widely through Europe and America, and became admired by audiences and high society alike. On stage, he did not simply stand and allow people to stare. He told his life story, performed acrobatic tricks, and demonstrated feats of strength. He showed that his condition did not prevent him from being skilled, thoughtful, and captivating. Lionel's life challenged narrow ideas of beauty and humanity. Though audiences came to see the lion-faced man, many left remembering the person behind the title, Grady Stiles the Lobster Boy. Grady Stiles, known as Lobster Boy, was born in 1937 with a rare condition called ectrodactyly. His hands and feet were shaped like claws, giving him the nickname that would follow him for life. Grady began performing at a young age, following in the footsteps of his father, who also had ectrodactyly. In circuses and sideshows, he used his claw-like hands to manipulate objects and perform tricks that fascinated audiences. But behind the stage lights, Grady's personal life became dark and violent. Despite his fame as a performer, he was known for abusive behavior. Especially when drinking 1978, he shot and killed his daughter's fiancée on the eve of their wedding. Because of his physical condition, he received a relatively light sentence and was placed on probation rather than sent to prison. Years later, in 1992, Grady Stiles was murdered by a hitman hired by his wife, Maria Teresa, and his son. They claimed the killing was retaliation after years of abuse. Grady Stiles' story is one of the darkest in sideshow history. It reveals that behind the curtain, beyond the posters and applause, some lives were marked not by wonder, but by pain, violence, and tragedy. Isaac W. Sprague, the human skeleton. Isaac W. Sprague, known as the human skeleton, was born in 1841 in East Bridgewater, Massachusetts. As a child, he seemed healthy, but around the age of 12, he began losing weight drastically. No matter how much he ate, he could not gain weight. His body became extremely thin, giving him a skeletal appearance that would later become his stage identity. In 1865, Isaac joined P.T. Barnum's circus and quickly became one of its most popular attractions. Audiences were stunned by his fragile appearance. On stage, he wore clothing that emphasized his thin frame, while also sharing the story of how his mysterious condition had shaped his life. Doctors never fully understood what caused his extreme weight loss. Some later theories suggested a severe form of muscular atrophy or a metabolic disorder, but no definitive answer was ever found. Isaac performed with Barnum and other sideshows throughout his career. Though his appearance made him famous, his life was not easy. His condition affected him constantly, and his fame came from the very suffering he could not escape. Isaac Sprague remains remembered as one of the most haunting figures of 19th century entertainment, a man whose body became both a mystery and a career. Daisy and Violet Hilton, the human marvels. Daisy and Violet Hilton were born on February 5, 1908, in Brighton, England. The sisters were conjoined at the hip and buttocks, sharing a common circulatory system while having separate organs. From the beginning, their lives were shaped by exploitation. Their adoptive mother, Mary Hilton, displayed them in fairs and shows as children. After Mary's death, they were controlled by her daughter, Edith, and Edith's husband, who continued to profit from them. But Daisy and Violet were not passive victims. They were trained in singing, dancing, and playing musical instruments. Over time, they became talented performers and popular figures on vaudeville stages. In 1931, the sisters finally sued their guardians for abuse and exploitation. They won their freedom and gained control over their own careers and finances. After that, Daisy and Violet appeared in films, including Freaks and Chained for Life, and continued to perform in vaudeville shows and carnivals. Their lives remained difficult, but their fight for independence made them unforgettable. The Hilton sisters' story is both tragic and inspiring, a story of talent stolen, freedom fought for, and two women determined to reclaim ownership of their own lives. James Morris, the Elastic Man. James Morris, another performer known as the Elastic Man, competed with Felix Whirl for the title of the most flexible human being alive. His body seemed capable of bending in ways that should not have been possible. Morris could twist his limbs, fold his body, and contort himself so dramatically that audiences wondered if he had bones at all. His performances drew large crowds, especially when he traveled with major circus companies such as the Ringling Brothers. Like Felix, Morris may have had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a condition that can create unusual flexibility in the joints and elasticity in the skin. But audiences of the time saw him as something closer to a living marvel. His act played into one of the deepest fascinations of the sideshow world, the fear and wonder of a body that refused to follow ordinary rules. James Morris remains remembered as one of the great contortion performers of curiosity, show history, a man whose body seemed to bend beyond belief. Hunter the Pony Boy. Hunter, known as the Pony Boy, was born in 1895 in Missouri with a rare physical condition called congenital genu recurvatum, sometimes described as a backward leg deformity. Because of this, he could not stand normally or support himself with crutches. Instead, he moved on all fours. His fame began when he displayed his unique movement at a small amusement park in Texas. From there, his reputation grew, eventually carrying him across North America with the famous Tom Mix Circus. For 36 years, Hunter performed for audiences who came to see the man who moved in a way that reminded them of a pony. But his life was not limited to the stage. After retiring, he remained active, restoring cars and raising rabbits. Hunter's story is one of adaptation and endurance. He transformed a difficult physical condition into a long career, then continued living with purpose after the applause faded. He is remembered as a fascinating figure of the Curiosity Show era, a person who turned difference into survival, performance, and a remarkable life.